one of the biggest things was the other competitors. So obviously I had a lot of people coming past me on the day, people sort of asking me why I was doing it on a BMX bike, people that had read the story and the backstory about Damo. The triathlon environment feels like a very close community. And I certainly felt on that bike course that the actual community sort of got behind me, which was amazing.
Hello, and welcome to the December 29th, 2023 edition of the TriDoc Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Sankoff, the TriDoc, an emergency physician, triathlon coach, and multiple Ironman finisher, coming to you from beautiful, sunny Denver, Colorado. This is it, the last episode of the year. And as I record this, I find myself looking forward to a new year that will bring with it a lot of uncertainty and a lot of change when it comes to the universe of long-course triathlon. I don't think that it is much of a secret that long-course racing faces some serious issues. The cost of participation has always been steep, but various forces in the marketplace continue to drive that ever higher, and this is causing a significant drop in participation, particularly in the younger age groups. Without an influx of younger athletes, there will not be renewal of the sport, and we risk seeing an aging out of long-course triathlon with eventual significant shrinkage of the population who participates to some likely tipping point at which it no longer becomes viable to have these events at the size and scale that we've all become accustomed to. To try and combat this, the World Triathlon Corporation, owners of the Ironman brand, have been working hard behind the scenes to reinvigorate their events and build excitement around races, similar to what many of us may remember from when we first got into the sport, certainly if we got into it long enough ago like I did. I'm sure that you all saw the email that came out in the week before Christmas, teasing some of the things that they are promising. Better swag, including better backpacks and finish shirts, and a return to the very popular race flags will all be welcome, though I can't imagine anyone will sign up for a 70.3 or full just to get one of these items. Still, it is an acknowledgement that many participants value these things, and Ironman should be given props for paying heed to that. In addition, Ironman promises a better overall race week experience, with speakers on site at the expo, longer times for signing in for the events, a signing wall similar to what we see at World Championship events, and a lot of efforts to make first-timers feel welcome, with walkthroughs, swim warm-up areas prior to each event, and get them more comfortable with what they're going to be tackling. For the professionals who race Ironman-branded events, we will all be looking forward to the Pro Point series that promises to bring a level of interest and excitement to professional racing that has been missing for some time. Rather than just waiting for the World Championships at the end of the season, those of us who care about this sort of thing will now have a whole year of races to follow and track as we watch the top pros battle for points and significant prize money. And if you're wondering if the pros care, well, we've already seen the likes of Lionel Sanders posting on YouTube asking his fans what kind and which of the events he should participate in next season. So clearly, this is going to be something that pros and age groupers alike are going to be paying attention to. But alas, it's not all good news for 2024. There remain a lot of open questions related to whether or not these efforts will succeed, and a lot of questions related to some other issues in long-course racing. First and foremost, what's going on with the PTO? After bursting out of the gate and making a big splash a few years ago, the PTO has made a lot of unforced errors and has very much faded into the background. Rather than try to establish itself as a complement to the WTC as they originally said they would, they instead have tried more and more to go head-to-head, and in so doing, have made several serious mistakes that have left the organization appear, at least to outside observers, to be seemingly teetering on the brink. With no significant events yet announced for 2024, I have to wonder if the PTO is done, or if it's going to limp along for one more season while it tries to sort itself out. There may still be a path forward, but without a significant infusion of cash and some real soul-searching about what it really wants to be, I'm not sure if the PTO can survive in a world where long-course triathlon is already struggling and the dominant player is so well established. Another piece of bad news, at least in my mind, and I know that not everybody's going to share this opinion, is the takeover of the Ironman University coaching program by the company TriDot. I don't think that I have to spend too much time rehashing my issues with TriDot, but suffice it to say, I have a few. I do not begrudge the company wanting to become a dominant player in triathlon coaching, nor do I think it was a bad decision for either Ironman or TriDot to pay a boatload of money in the case of TriDot, or to accept that money in the case of Ironman, to essentially give those rights for all Ironman certified coaches and all the athletes who might want to get coaching as they prepare for an event, basically to TriDot. It makes good business sense for both parties. Ironman gets a cash infusion, which it desperately needs, and TriDot gets access to a lot of potential business. Left out in the cold, though, are all the independent coaches out there who now are being squeezed by the TriDot juggernaut, who will now deliver a coaching certification that essentially seems, at least at the outset, to be all about learning how to use TriDot as a method to generate plans for athletes. This is not only self-serving, but, in my mind, a huge loss to potential coaches because the original Ironman University course was actually really good and a darn sight better than some of the other ones that I've had to take that are out there. I would argue that this is also kind of a big loss to athletes, as TriDot, in my mind, does not offer anywhere near the same level of coaching that having a dedicated personal coach does. And yes, I recognize how that sounds, given that I am a coach myself. But having spoken to many people who have used TriDot and then left to work with a coach, including some of my own athletes, I don't think that I'm necessarily speaking out of turn. Look, a new year is always an opportunity for turning over a new leaf, and as we are seeing, that's exactly what's happening in long course triathlon. A lot is changing, and because of that, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of angst. We can only speculate at how these changes are going to impact us as individual participants or how they're going to affect the sport as a whole. Time will tell. One thing that you can be certain of, though, is that so long as I'm around, I'm going to be here to tell you about it and how it's going. As 2023 comes to an end, so too does the fourth full year of programs of this show, and it has been an absolute pleasure to bring this program to more and more of you over time. I look forward to continuing the dialogue with all of you, bringing you all of the science to help you understand how to train, race, and recover smarter, and more entertaining and insightful interviews with all kinds of people in the world of multisport. Please accept my sincere gratitude to you for accompanying me on the journey for as long as you have, or however long that might be, and allow me to be the latest to wish you the very best for 2024. I look forward to finding out what the year has in store for all of us and multisport as a whole. On the show today, Coach Juliet Hockman and I are going to look at a product that almost all triathletes love and, dare I say, probably need in their lives, and that's coffee. But it's not just any coffee. Long Run Coffee, you see, is a product sold only online and is promoted as coffee for runners, though, truthfully, it's marketed at all endurance athletes. The Slick website promises a lot of pretty amazing things, and all of those things are attributable to the addition of a magical elixir of electrolytes infused into the coffee beans themselves. Well, rather than have any of my listeners pony up the fairly exorbitant cost in order to try this product, Juliet and I thought that we should examine the claims and the science on this episode's Medical Mailbag, and that's coming up shortly. Later, I'm joined by Australian age group triathlete Dave Lowry. Now, I'm guessing that most of you have never heard of Dave, but you might have caught wind of what he did at the recent Ironman Western Australia, otherwise known as Ironman Busselton. You see, Dave completed that race on a modified BMX bike, and while that might sound completely crazy, the backstory is anything but. I had a chance to chat with Dave about why he did this, how he made it happen, and what transpired on race day, and that's coming up a little later on, and it's an interview that I promise you're going to enjoy. Before all of that, I want to take a moment to thank all of my Patreon supporters of this podcast once again, who have decided that for about the price of a cup of coffee per month, and I'm talking regular coffee, not the Long Run coffee, they could sign up to support this program and in doing so get access to bonus interviews and other segments that come out every month or so. The most recent of those bonus episodes came out just last week and featured a detailed medical segment on the evolutionary trade-offs that come with the use of highly engineered running shoes. That bonus episode and others like it are available on a private feed for all of my subscribers. Plus, for North American subscribers who sign up at the $10 per month level of support, they receive a special thank you gift in the form of a BOCO TriDoc podcast running hat. So visit my Patreon site today at patreon.com/TriDoc podcast and become a supporter so that you too can get access and maybe this cool gift as well. And as always, I thank you in advance just for considering. It is December 29th. We are in the final throes of 2023, but we still have time for one last medical mailbag. And so I am joined by my longtime friend and colleague, Coach Juliet Hockman. Juliet, how are you?
I'm great. Did you have a good Christmas?
I had a really nice Christmas. I had to work on Christmas Day, but I didn't start work until 5. So got to open up the presents in the morning. We had Christmas dinner, as the family likes to
Nice.
refer to it. And then I waddled off to work and tried to get up off of my chair as much as I could to go see patients. But it was a really nice day. How about yourself?
Yeah, really great. Both of my grown sons were home. It was a very chill day. I don't think they pulled themselves out of bed until 9 or 10 o'clock. And same idea. We did the presents. We hung out. We played with our new guest. We had a big meal and collapsed into bed at the end of the day. So it was a great day. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that the holiday hacks, I'm batting maybe 50%.
I'm doing pretty well on the alcohol still. I have to say, giving myself a soda water instead of the alcohol. But boy, the cheese plate, it just keeps coming back to bite me.
Yeah, it's the cheese. The cheese has been my vice this Christmas for sure. I've done pretty well with the cookies. My wife makes amazing cookies, and I have managed to do pretty well with those. My son, oh God, that kid is so great. My son, I can't remember where it came from. I think my wife got an M.Dot cookie cutter. And so my son made a bunch of gingerbread M.Dot cookies for me. And I've been making my way through them slowly. But
Oh,
the cheese,
that's awesome. I love it.
yeah,
We had a
the cheese has
huge
been a problem.
chocolate peppermint cake on Christmas Day, and I think Steve and I ate an entire quiche between the two of us on Christmas morning. So it hasn't been great, but here we are, almost the end of the holidays.
That's right.
There.
We're going to make it to the new year, and we'll discuss
We
discuss New Year's resolutions when we get through this segment. But first, we have a topic to discuss, and what is it that we have on tap for today?
Absolutely. So sort of on the if we can milk this metaphor, to be awake and alive for the new year, one of our questions from our listeners came about coffee, and this one coffee company in particular called Long Run Coffee, which makes a bunch of promises on its website about how their coffee grind essentially is infused with electrolytes, which if you mix your electrolytes with your coffee, you are better fueled and better prepared for your next long workout. So we looked into this, and I'll let you take it from there, Jeff, including some of the claims that these folks make on their website.
Yeah, and I think we have to always take into consideration the slickness of the website, because as we've talked about before, one of the red flags is how slick the website looks. I think if a website features 8-bit animation, it's probably going to have the stuff that works the best. If it looks like Wreck-It Ralph, it's going to be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No,
true.
this website is very, very nice looking and makes a lot of interesting claims. We all know now, we have discussed caffeine in the past and the benefits of caffeine, and there's no question that caffeine does provide performance benefits. What the folks at Long Run Coffee, and the founder of this stuff was himself a runner. He continues to be a runner, and they say that the coffee is supposed to make your long run that much better by imbibing this brew. They do, however, make a point to be sure to capture all endurance athletes. They say it's great for whatever kind of endurance sport you do. And I want to take a moment just to really give credit to one of our listeners who reached out to me, Stuart Pittman. He's a pharmacist who lives in Indiana. And he had reached out to me several months ago and told me, hey, if you ever need some help with pharmacy or drug interaction or any kind of research related to pharmaceutical type of research, that he was willing to help. And he really was a tremendous benefit to myself and my interns as we were working on this particular subject. Stuart sent me a ton of research that he did. I just asked a simple question, because one of the claims that they make on Long Run's website is that these electrolytes somehow increase the bioavailability of caffeine. And if that was true, that would be a really big deal. Now, I know from my own experience working in medicine that caffeine is added to a lot of drugs. For example, if you think about Excedrin, Excedrin is a typical headache remedy that you can buy over the counter. And basically all it is it's a mixture of aspirin, the trade name that Bayer has for acetylsalicylic acid, or ASA. And it's a mixture of ASA and caffeine. And we know that when you add caffeine to a lot of different types of medications, caffeine enhances the bioavailability of other medications. And you and I discussed bioavailability when we talked about NAD recently.
Yep.
Bioavailability just means that a medication is absorbed. More of it is absorbed. It's absorbed more rapidly. And then more of it becomes available within the bloodstream, either because it bypasses the liver or just because you've absorbed more of it. The same percentage gets through the liver, but because there's more absorbed, more of it gets to where it needs to go in order to exert its effect. So if this idea that adding electrolytes to your coffee increased the bioavailability of caffeine, then yeah, you'd get a bigger boost. You would get a bigger effect from the caffeine. Well, we could find absolutely zero evidence that suggested this was true. There's no, caffeine doesn't enhance the absorption of electrolytes, and electrolytes do not enhance the absorption of caffeine. And they have, to their credit, Long Run has quite a few references on their website, but none of the references actually back up what they're saying. They have a sentence in one of their claims that says something that, their electrolyte blend is somehow more bioavailable than an alternative blend of electrolytes. They also say something about electrolytes increasing bioavailability, all these things. And then if you look at their research and actually go to their research, the research doesn't actually back anything up that they're claiming. So then the next question becomes, well, what are you getting in the coffee? Because they suggest that electrolytes are important for performing exercise. And this is, of course, we know 100% true. As you run, you sweat, you lose electrolytes. And topping up maybe with electrolytes before you go out for a run with your cup of coffee, why not? That sounds like a decent idea. Well, what are they giving us? Well, they're giving us some sodium in the form of sodium bicarbonate. But how much are they giving us? Not a whole lot. Something like 19 milligrams, I think. I think that's what I read. Let me go to their website. I want to make sure I'm getting this
I'm
right.
looking
It
too.
wasn't a huge amount. Let's see. Go to their coffee, and there are several types of the coffee that they make. Many of them are flavored. They all seem to have the same amount of electrolytes in each of them. And what they say is they provide sodium that is important for muscle contraction, muscle performance, and joint movement. I can tell you that sodium is, while important as an electrolyte, has very little to do with any of those things. Sodium does not play much of a role in muscle contraction. That's much more of a calcium thing. Certainly nothing to do with muscle performance and joint movement. Potassium for fluid retention, hydration support, and muscle control. Potassium actually has nothing to do with fluid retention. That's sodium. Hydration support, I don't even know what that means. Muscle control, I'm not really sure. Calcium for bone health, yes, that is true, but not in the amounts that they're providing. I'll get back to that in a second. Muscle contraction, yes, that one is true. You do need calcium for muscle contraction. And then calcium for hormone regulation. Not really sure where that's coming from. And then magnesium for lactate reduction, muscle recovery, and digestion improvement. Okay, we know that magnesium helps with improving or reducing constipation, for example, but again, not in the amounts that they're providing. As far as lactate reduction and muscle recovery, I don't know where that's coming from. So how much are they giving you? Well, if you take 1 cup of coffee, you are going to get 75 milligrams of sodium bicarbonate, which is not very much, 175 milligrams of potassium gluconate, 13 milligrams, 1-3, that's 3% of the recommended daily allowance of calcium in the form of calcium citrate, and then an entire 12 milligrams of magnesium citrate, which is 1% of the recommended daily allowance. You're getting almost nothing in a cup of this coffee in terms of the amount of electrolytes that you need on a daily basis. And you're paying quite a bit. This coffee costs $29 for 12 ounces of ground coffee. Compare that to, I don't know, I mean, I buy I'm a coffee snob. I admit it. I buy pretty expensive coffee. I pay on the order of something like, I think we pay $12 or $13 for a pound of coffee. So we're paying about half as much for a pound. And this is $30 for 3/4 of a pound. So that's not inexpensive for something that's not actually doing what they say it's going to do.
Now, I will say that if you're looking for a really unique gift for an endurance athlete friend in your life, the design of their bags and the names of their products are beautiful. The bags are beautiful. So if you're looking for sort of that boutique one-off gift, the Long Run, which is it's their dark roast, or Junk Miles, which is their medium roast. I mean, that's funny. Like, I might buy a bag and give it to someone as a Secret Santa gift, since we're at that time of year. But in terms of, spending that much money for a bag of coffee for what we're seeing or we're suggesting is there's no benefit. I think I'm sticking to my Pete's ground that I get at Safeway.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way to kind of, put a bow on it and sort of say, hey, this is what it could be good for. But to suggest that it does any of the things that they claim it does, I think is generally, shall we say, exaggerating or embellishing what it actually is going to do. And I think that we were not able to find anything that supported any of their claims, which is all too frequently the case. I'm not really sure why they charge so much for their coffee. Just the electrolytes themselves shouldn't add that much. The packaging is lovely, as you mentioned, and they are a small company, so they probably don't have the economy of scale. So I'm guessing that they're just having to source their coffee in a higher amount. Maybe something also about the production. I guess they're not just sort of sprinkling the magnesium citrate and potassium gluconate over this stuff. So I don't know. There's probably something to do with how it's made. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe if they're successful, their prices will come down. And if you want to add a little bit of salt to your own coffee, you could do that for a lot cheaper than what they're charging.
Can't you see the genesis of this idea? It's like pouring coffee in from the pot, sprinkling a little Gatorade in there. Or Scratch or some other electrolyte, right? Base salts, and be like, hey, this is a great product idea. Let's do this.
Yeah. Oh, well. Well, I'm hopeful that in 24, we're going to come across some more products that we can review and actually find some merit and make some suggestions that, hey, this is actually something that we suggest and recommend, because it's not like I like reviewing all these things and finding that they're kind of not very helpful or very useful. I mean, I'm glad to save my listeners from having to go and spend that money themselves. But at the same time, it would be nice to be able to find some things that are being advertised that actually have merit, because, hey, I'm an athlete too, and I want to find things that work and help us race and, train and recover better. So
I don't know. I think you're kind of hitting it out of the park, Jeff. I mean, 2022 was the year of spirulina. 2023 was the year of tart cherry juice. I mean, we got one a year. So
it's true.
So what is it? 52, 27. What do we do? 26 episodes a year. You're 1 out of 26.
Yeah. It's not, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. We can hope for some new development. And of course, this gives me the chance to remind all of you that a lot of these ideas come from you guys. So if you come across something that you are interested in knowing the truth about, is it something that you should be spending time or money on, please do send it to us. You can do so by joining the private Facebook group and dropping a question in there. Or you can send me an email at tri_doc@icloud.com. Juliette, do you have plans for the new year? Are you going to be spending any time developing resolutions?
We do have plans for the new year. I live in a small town about an hour outside Portland, Oregon. And tragically, our 4th of July fireworks this year, they put on a really good 4th of July fireworks, was canceled because the day before a forest fire started just on the other side of the river. And so it just wasn't the right time to have a fireworks display. And so they saved all those fireworks. And so now we're having it on New Year's Eve, which is great. And we can see them from our window. And it's at 8:00, which is like perfect, because we don't have to stay up too late instead of, in the summer, it gets dark a lot later. So win-win for everybody. And my 2 sons will be here with their significant others, which is awesome. First time ever. So we're going to have a little New Year's Eve dinner and fireworks here. So I'm really looking forward to that. In terms of New Year's resolutions, I mean, we've chatted about this before. I'm not a big New Year's resolutions person because I feel like if you're only making them once a year, you're not really working on the things that you should be working on. However, having said that, we are resolving once again in 2024 to work a little bit less, socialize a little bit more. And I made a move towards that just an hour ago by inviting some people over to dinner on January 9th. So we are getting on it for 2024 already. What about you, Jeff?
Oh, that's great. That's great. I love that. No major plans. My daughter is still here visiting from university and does not go back until the end of the first week. So I will be up hopefully in the mountains in Breckenridge to celebrate the new year. Breckenridge also does not do fireworks in the summer. They used to every July 4th, but of course, because of forest fire risk, that does not tend to happen. They have done fireworks at New Year's, and I have to check and see if they're doing them. It's really, really pretty when they do the fireworks against the backdrop of the mountain with the snow and everything. So I'm hopeful that they'll do that again. And as far as resolutions go, I'm like you. I was not surprised and yet at the same time disappointed to see the percentage of people that stick with resolutions through the first week. It's so incredibly low. And I wonder how much of that is just because people make resolutions that are just not doable. A lot of times those resolutions are things like giving up an addiction, like I'm going to stop smoking, right? I mean, that's just not something that is easy to do. And then how many of those other things are big lifestyle changes? Oh, I'm going to start exercising, or I'm going to give up sweets, or whatever it is. I mean, those are things that are kind of baked in, and just to flip a switch on one day just seems so difficult. I do like that Ironman is having like kind of a commitment day on January 1st. I think that's kind of an interesting kind of ploy, if you will, gambit to get people to sign up for races early. And we all know, as I spoke in the introduction of this episode, about the struggles that long course triathlon is facing in terms of having signups. I hope that is successful in getting people to commit at a time when they are more likely than not to actually do so. And who knows, maybe those people will need a coach and they can think of us at Life Sport, right?
That's right. Exactly. Totally. Yeah.
But no, I don't do resolutions myself because I think that if you're going to make a change, you should do so at the time and not put it off till January 1st when you're less likely to actually follow through with it. So I'm like you. I think we're both at an age where I think life is precious, and if something's important enough to do, you don't put it off. You do it right then and there, and you make those changes because they're important to be done and because they have an impact not just on you but on others. And so, but I give all props to people who do make New Year's resolutions and who, especially those who are going to be committed to stick to them. And I think that we should definitely encourage people who are thinking of doing a resolution, such as getting into better shape, eating better, trying to better themselves in any way. I 100% encourage that. And we are here to support you in whatever way we can.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I think, resolutions can fall into a number of different categories. And whether you put a date on the calendar, or whether you just work on them, sort of year round, there's the sort of, I will drink less, eat better, exercise more, lose weight, whatever. Like I sort of see that as one category of resolutions, if you will. And then, the other is, which is sort of where the ones I fall more into is, these are the things I know I don't do well as a human being, and just waking up every morning and before I put my feet on the floor saying, today I'm going to do better at whatever it is, saying thank you, showing my husband I appreciate him, calling my parents more often, like those types of things, like just every day sort of showing a little bit of resolve about just being a better person, whatever that looks like. But yes, 100%, whatever we're working on, we're all working on something. And let's just get after it, whether it's January 1 or anytime throughout 2024.
Yeah. Well, it's been so much fun expanding this segment to include you, Juliet. I've really enjoyed the last several months of doing the Medical Mailbag, and I'm really looking forward to continuing the fun in 2024.
Thank you, Jeff. Me too. I've loved every minute of it, and I really look forward to these sessions. So thanks for involving me.
And just a quick note to listeners, I am going to be out of the country for the first couple of weeks of January. So the next episode will not feature a new segment, but we will be back at the end of January for the second episode of 2024. The next episode that will air on January, I believe the 13th, is going to be a rerun of it's going to be January the 8th will be the next episode. That is going to be a rerun of the most popular episode in terms of downloads and listens that I have ever produced. And that's going to be the nutrition episode that featured dietitians Alex Larson and Celine Evans. So you can have a look for that in your feed on January the 8th. Share that with somebody who maybe is having a resolution about eating better. That's a perfect one to listen to. And share that with someone who might be interested in becoming a new subscriber to the TriDoc podcast. Juliette, it's been an absolute pleasure. I wish you all the best for 2024. I look forward to a lot more fun conversations coming up next year.
And to you, Jeff. Thanks so much.
My guest on the podcast today is likely not someone who many have heard of, but I am hopeful that I can be a part of changing that narrative because he has a lot to say, and it is all for a very important cause. Dave Lowry is an age group triathlete who lives in Perth, Australia. He is married and has 4 children. He often refers to his family as the Brady Bunch, as he was remarried, and the resulting mixed family has children that range in age from 4 to 24. Sadly, last year, Dave lost his brother Damo to suicide, so he decided to do an Ironman on a BMX in his honor and to raise awareness for mental health. I came across Dave's story and the story of him riding that very BMX bike in the Ironman that took place in Busselton, which is south of Perth, just last month. I found that story in an online triathlon publication and knew straight away that I wanted to have him on as a guest. And thanks to the wonders of social media, I was able to get in touch with his sister, who connected me with him. And here we are. Dave, welcome to the TriDoc podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks. Great to be talking with you today.
I want to begin first just with your own personal history in triathlon. I know you've been in the sport for quite a long time. Why don't you tell the listeners how you got involved and what you've done in triathlon over the years?
Like most people in WA, we have a connection to the mining industry. There's lots of mining happening in Western Australia, and we lived for a long time in the Southwest Coal Mine, which is about 2.5 hours south of Perth. So I did a lot of my early growing up down there in Collie, Western Australia. Great part of the world. And when I was in first year high school, my sports teacher got me interested in triathlon. So he was into triathlon and had done an Ironman before. And he sort of suggested, why don't I come down and join the local tri club for a try down at the river. And I guess that was the start of it. So at the time I was 13, and I've probably done close to 200 triathlons since then across varying distances, from the sprint tries, half Ironman, and ultimately through to the Ironman triathlon, first one in 2004. So yeah, sort of started, I guess, from an early mentor in my high school teacher, and grew into somewhat of an obsession from there. So been lucky enough to do triathlons all across the state in different areas, swimming pools, in the river, the ocean, in creeks and lakes. It's been amazing.
Yeah, and I think like all of us that are involved in any way in the sport, we understand the addictive nature of it. And that's a pretty long career from 13. That's amazing. How old are you now?
47.
All right. So yeah, you've been at it for quite a long time. I often think about how I've been doing it now for over 20 years and think about how that's a long time in the sport. Well, you've definitely got me on that. For those of us who don't know, I've been to the eastern part of Australia, as far south as Melbourne and as far north as Cairns. I'm not familiar with the climate in Perth. I'm actually looking at my map right now so I can see where Perth is located. Tell us about the climate in Perth. How often, can you train all year long, or does it have more of a seasonal aspect to its weather?
Yeah, no, it's a pretty moderate climate over here in Western Australia. So it's pretty dry sort of heat, not a lot of rainfall over here. So it's probably pretty ideal. I think probably the best example is I was lucky enough to do the Berlin Marathon this year, and we trained through winter. And I think there was probably 2 runs through the heart of winter that we had wet conditions. So it's not to say that it doesn't rain over here and we don't get wind, but typically the rain and wind comes through pretty quickly. So we are quite lucky here with the conditions. There is a prevailing sea breeze that we get pretty much every day, which gets a bit strong in the afternoon. But if you can sort of organise your rides to go into the wind and come home with the wind behind you, it's always pretty good. But yeah, the conditions over here in Western Australia are perfect.
And I think most people will have some knowledge of the dangers of the ocean swimming. How much of that is a reality?
Oh, look, it's always in the back of your mind over here. And I I personally don't swim in the ocean solo. I love ocean swimming, and we have some great ocean swims over here in WA, like the Rottnest 21K open water swim. Happy to do it in a group of other swimmers, but yeah, there are quite a few sharks that follow the whales up and down the coast. So it's always in the back of your mind if you're out there by yourself.
Yeah, a group swim, there's strength in numbers, right? Or safety in numbers.
Exactly.
Take some time to tell us about Damo.
So Damo, so when we grew up in Collie, one of 4 siblings. So there was two girls and 2 boys. Lived in a small house there. So I sort of shared a room growing up with Damo. And, we were pretty close. There's 3 years difference between us. I'm 3 years older than Damo. And I guess growing up in that country environment, we spent quite a lot of time outdoors. We rode BMXs and, it was one of those sort of safe environments where kids can just get out whenever they want and enjoy nature. So I spent quite a lot of time with Damo when I was younger. Then obviously as you get older and you start to develop relationships and have your own relationships and marriages and so forth and your work, you do, go your own way a little bit, but we're always very, very close. Damo worked in the media industry over here in Australia. So he did quite a lot of sound engineering work in the various news channels over here, sporting channels, and was freelancing right up to the end. So very well connected within those groups, very much loved by everyone that sort of knew him or worked with him. Just a all-round great guy, very supportive of me in terms of when I was doing particularly the early Ironman. Definitely got right behind it. He had to watch me, I guess at an early age, watch reruns of Kona. When we got the half an hour sort of time slots come through in December every year. I used to record it on the VHS cassettes and play it over and over again. So I guess, he was always part of that triathlon journey.
And did he himself partake in the sport as well, or was he just a supporter?
No, he was a smoker as a young guy, but so he wasn't really into the running and the riding, but he was right into his scuba diving. So it was a really weird scenario in that he wasn't such a fit guy on land, but underwater I couldn't keep up with him. So it was amazing. I'd chew through my hair much faster than Damo, and he would be off chasing a crayfish and looking at fish. So yeah, underwater he was like a fish, but yeah, on land he probably preferred a beer and a smoke.
I read the story about how you came to choose to honor your brother with riding the BMX. Could you share that with my listeners? Because it's a great story.
Yeah, so I guess I started getting interested in Ironman racing through watching Kona and watching sort of some of my childhood heroes like Mark Allen. Never really thought I'd get the opportunity to do Ironman, and because the Ironman was on the east coast of Australia in a place called Foster, that's since moved to Port Macquarie. But then there was an announcement of the Busselton Ironman event in 2004 and the first one, and it was really a great opportunity, and I thought, well, why not grab it? And so, as part of that story, Damo was behind me, supporting me all the way. He was out there on the day at the finish line. And we also then, went back that night to watch the other competitors come across the line right up till midnight. So, he was there having lots of fun. And then 2 years after that, the Australian Ironman moved from Foster up to Port Macquarie. So Damo was always interested in Ironman racing and just enjoyed being, I guess, around the finishing chute. And I think he once said to me that there's nothing like, the inspiration and feeling you get being on an Ironman finishing chute, watching the pros and the age groupers come through. So we traveled to Port Macquarie to watch the inaugural Port Macquarie Australian Ironman. And we were out watching the bike course and watching all the time trial bikes go past. And Chris McCormack, I think, won that year. And he actually made a comment to me about, wouldn't it be amazing to see someone do this on a BMX bike? And he was questioning whether it would actually be allowed to do it or, would you be able to finish it? And so I guess the idea of doing an Ironman came from Damo, I guess back in, I think it was 2006, whilst watching the first Ironman Port Macquarie. So it was amazing.
And at what point did you decide that this is how, or this is what you were going to do to honor your brother?
Oh, look, it's one of those things you sort of, when you lose someone in the way that we did with Damo, you kind of, you ultimately want them back. You want them to, you do anything to get them back. And, there's the reality that sets in after some time they're not coming back. And then you kind of go, well, how can we share Damo's story to help others? And I guess, that sort of, Damo passed away in August last year. So that was been on my mind for some time. And then late last year, I was just looking online and I saw that Mongoose had released a retro 1980s style BMX bike. And it was kind of very similar to the bikes that we were riding at the time growing up in college. So I guess the idea of, seeing that bike, remembering my childhood with Damo, and then I guess wanting to do something to share his story and to share, the importance about sort of mental health and looking after yourself and others when they're not feeling the best. So I guess it was a combination of, one day seeing that Mongoose Super Goose BMX online, and I guess the other part wanting to do something, for Damo's honour.
What were some of the challenges then that you faced when you were trying to train and even race on such a bike?
Yeah, look, I think the first thing when I saw the Mongoose Super Goose online, one of the things I noticed is it didn't have a brake on both front and back. So the first thing I did was actually reach out to Ironman West Australia to see whether it would actually be allowed to ride on the BMX in the event. And, they sort of looked into it and came back to me a couple of weeks later and said, look, that's fine. You just have to have 2 brakes. And they reminded me of the fact that there is actually a cutoff time on the bike. And
they weren't too confident you were going to be able to do it, I guess.
No, not at all. And the other thing that they reminded me of was the fact that their spare mechanic didn't carry spares for 20-inch wheels. So I'd have to carry all my own tires and tubes and so forth. So I guess that was the first challenge. I guess then the other bit was the bike itself, the gearing on it probably wasn't fast enough to be able to meet the cutoff time. So I had to take the bike once I bought it down to a local bike mechanic and said to him, look, I need this thing to potentially do 35 Ks an hour, top speed. And, I need to get the ride height a little bit higher so it feels a bit more like a road bike. So that was probably the biggest challenge, getting the bike right. And then I guess from a training perspective, I didn't have the bike actually ready until 2 weeks before the Ironman. So a lot of the training that I did was on a roller in the carport through winter. And I used my daughter's mountain bike because that kind of had the same sort of setup feel as the BMX. So
okay, hang on. Wait. Okay. So when did you acquire the bike? The BMX?
So I bought the bike probably, when was it? The Ironman was in December. So I bought the bike in September.
Oh, so you really did cut it close. I thought maybe you bought it like a year in advance and it just took a really long time to modify it. So you cut it pretty close. Okay. Yeah. And your daughter, you said, now you have kids at age 4 to 24. Is this like your 6-year-old daughter? How old is this daughter's bike that you were riding?
Yeah, no, it was my daughter who was 21. So her mountain bike had been sitting in the shed for probably 6 years unused. So I pulled it out, put it on the roller, and it kind of felt very similar to the BMX.
So tell us what modifications you made specifically. Obviously, you added a second brake. So now you had 2 brakes on the BMX bike. Did you add gearing? Is that how you made it faster?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I took it to an amazing bike mechanic that we have here in Perth. His name's Aldo. And I said to him, look, this thing needs to go 35 Ks an hour. He does all sorts of weird modifications to bike. And he said, no problem. I'll be able to have a look at that. So what he actually ended up doing was he had to actually find new wheels to be able to put in a hub in the rear wheel that ended up with 6 gears in it. So interestingly, the wheels that he found came from Florida in America, because that was the only place where he knew he could find the wheels that would be able to fit the hub. And, he got the hub from Shimano in Taiwan. That came across from there. And then he manufactured the new seat from stem to get the ride height. So I tried to keep it as original as possible, but it did need the gearing to be able to make it go to the speed to be able to meet the cutoff. And that meant, getting that rear hub in the back wheel.
And then slick tires, I'm guessing.
Absolutely, yeah. No, he said, look, I can put some slick tires on there and I can get them to 90 PSI and, hopefully that will get you your cutoff time.
And were you carrying a flat kit just in case?
Yeah, I was, yeah. So I had to, one of the wheels, the back wheel, didn't have quick release hubs. So I had to carry a crescent, I had to carry 2 tubes and some screwdrivers. So, and that I had because the BMX doesn't have the same carrying capacity as a road bike in terms of water bottles, I ended up having 2 water bottles behind the back seat. one of those was taken up by the toolkit and the other one was the bottle for the hydration.
Well, that was my next question. How did you manage hydration and nutrition? Because today's fancy bikes, they have internal water bladders, they have all kinds of storage. I mean, I've seen the picture of you on this bike, and I think we have a link to it in the show notes. But the amount of stuff that most people carry in a triathlon now is legion. So how are you getting by?
Yeah, look, I ended up putting a waist belt around my waist, under my singlet, and that was where all my gels were. And luckily enough, on the Busselton Ironman course, the aid stations on the bike are probably about every sort of 5 to 10 kilometers. So there's plenty of aid stations there, and I was exchanging the biddens, I guess, through every sort of second aid station. So I was able to sort of get the hydration in. So yeah, it kind of meant a bit more work on the day, but I was able to get through it. So.
That is fortunate. That's a lot of aid stations. That's pretty amazing.
Yep.
Did you keep the pegs on the front fork?
No, I didn't. No. And it's actually interesting that one of the reasons why it took so long to get built up was the actual, I needed to put the clipless pedals on the crank arms, and the thread depth of a standard BMX bike isn't the same as a road bike. So I had to try and find an adapter that would actually then allow me to put the clipless pedals on. So that came literally 2 weeks before the start of the Ironman. So it probably only got its first proper ride, I think, about 9 or 10 days out.
Wow. So how did that feel? I mean, the first time you go riding on it, are you like thinking to yourself, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Or did you feel like, oh, wow, this is actually going to be okay?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I remember the day I picked the bike up from the bike mechanic shop, and he was serving another customer and getting them tuned up on their new electric bike. And then he bought mine out and he said, look, go for a ride on it in the car park. And at that point, you don't know what to expect. And he had a brief, and I knew he was a good bike mechanic. And then I went for a ride around the bike shop car park, and it was just incredible. I had this beaming grin from ear to ear because it just felt so amazing. So yeah, I knew the bike was pretty good. And then I knew in the last couple of weeks, I'd done the work on the rollers and just probably just needed to get used to the angles and the setup of the BMX, which is obviously quite different to a road bike.
So tell us about the race itself. How did it go for you? How did you, it's not a hilly course, so obviously that played to your favor, but how did you feel doing the race? It must have been emotional in a lot of ways. I want to hear what you remember about the day.
Yeah, it was an amazing day. I was supporting, I guess, a few local charities, and one of them's called Are You OK? So part of it was sharing the story about mental health. So I had those singlets on right from the start of the day, and people had recognized the bike from the check-in. So it became a bit of a celebrity, I think, on Reddit overnight. So people were on the lookout for it. And, I had a fantastic swim. The swim course down in Busselton, it's in a big, massive bay. Beautiful conditions. One of my best open water swims I've done. Then got out on the bike, and when I got to the bike, the Ironman Western Australia team were there with video cameras, and the commentators were sort of talking me out of the water and onto the bike. So, and they were getting the crowd excited about me entering the bike course, and there was a massive cheer. And I remember sort of just riding out to these people, I guess, at the bike exit point, just cheering and wishing me all the best for the ride. And it was quite an amazing experience. Had my family there. My mum and dad were there, and sisters and their family. That was I think I remember this sense of just this big, massive smile on my face, looking forward to the bike course. And like you said, Busselton is a very flat course. I'm not sure what the actual vertical range is, but it might be 60 to 100 meters in total over the 180K. So very flat, great roads. And on the day we had a bit of a strange breeze. It was a westerly breeze, which is a bit unusual for down there. And the first probably 30, 40 Ks, we had the wind straight behind us on nice smooth roads. So it just felt incredible. And the bike course, I had sort of people on the side of the road cheering the bike and looking shocked as I was riding past in this sea of 3,000 time trial bikes. And that was amazing to get that support from the sideline. But I guess probably one of the biggest things was the other competitors. So obviously I had a lot of people coming past me on the day, and I guess just the people giving me the support, people sort of asking me why I was doing it on a BMX bike, people that had read the story and the backstory about Damo. It was quite quite amazing. The triathlon environment feels like a very close community. And I certainly felt on that bike course that the actual community sort of got behind me, which was amazing. So really enjoyed it. So had a great bike leg. I'm probably not designed for bike riding. I'm probably better designed for running. I was really looking forward to the run, but I guess the back end of the run caught up with me a little bit. The last 2 laps were a bit tough on the run course, but managed to get home just after dark before they started handing out the glow sticks, which was a bit of a goal of mine. I finished in just over 12 hours. So it was an amazing day.
Wow. Well, what was your bike time?
So the bike time was about 6 hours 30. So I think the bike averaged 27 Ks an hour. So on the course,
you showed Ironman Western Australia, didn't you? Good for you.
Yeah, no, like I said, I think having that support, it's amazing having that support on the side of the road and from other competitors, how much that spurs you on. And I think, that made a big difference. I thought I could average 25 Ks an hour. So I think the extra 2 Ks came from the other competitors around me, which was great.
That is really incredible. Well, what's next for you in triathlon?
I'm not sure. I think the Mongoose Super Goose is going to have a bit of a break. I did a great job. So look, I think for now, it was 19 years between Ironman races. And I'd tell people now when they ask me what's next, on the run course, I ran past this guy and had a chat to him. He was 84 years old, doing an Ironman, and he qualified for Kona for next year, and he's going. So he's going to be 85. I'm sort of 47. So if you look at that sort of 19 years, maybe there's another one in me. I'm not sure. Look, I think I've followed Ironman racing for a long time, followed Kona, those very informative days, watching Mark Allen win his 6th Ironman events. The dream would always be to do Hawaii Ironman in Kona. You never know, never. But the Mongoose Super Goose have to go a bit faster than what I did to be able to qualify for that.
If you fast forward, I don't know, a year or two down the road, what would you like the legacy of this episode to be for you and for Damo?
Look, I think the biggest thing for me is, unfortunately with Damo, we didn't know his personal struggles. So it was a real shock to us when he passed away. So I guess the legacy for me and the Are You OK raising that we did was, Are You OK is all about having better conversations with people that might be struggling. And, how can you, as someone who's not a professional that deals with mental health every day, ask the right questions of people that may be struggling. I guess for me, it's sharing that message that it's okay not to be okay. And that if you're not feeling all right, reach out to the ones around you, the ones that love you the most, because they'll build a protective wall of love that will keep you safe. So I think if I can look at it 2 years down the track, if people are having those conversations with others around them, whether it be family or other members in the triathlon community, then to me, that's a big win.
Well, it's a lovely story and a lovely sentiment, and I can't think of a better way to end off the holiday period, to end off 2023, and to have that kind of hopeful message as we head into 2024. Dave, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today and sharing this really terrific story. I think that what you did, how you did it is really remarkable, and I'm so glad I was able to reach you. Special thanks to your sister, Fiona, who I reached out to and just cold called on Facebook and was able to connect us, so please give her my regards. Dave Lowry is a age group triathlete. He lives in Perth, Western Australia. He raced the Busselton Ironman very recently, which is also known as Ironman Western Australia. He did that on a modified BMX bike, and he did so to honor his brother Damo, who he lost to suicide in 2022. Dave Lowry, thank you so much for joining me on the TriDoc podcast, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, and to you too. Have a great holiday.
And that's it for another episode. The TriDoc podcast is produced and edited by me, Jeff Sankoff, along with my interns.
I'm Agent Johnson. This is Special Agent Johnson.
Oh, how you doing?
No relation.
I'm Jeff Sankoff, the TriDoc. I'm in charge here.
Not anymore.
Those interns are Ian Johnson and Ben Johnson. You can find the show notes for everything discussed on the show today, as well as archives of previous episodes at tridocpodcast.com. Do you have questions about any of the issues discussed on this episode, or do you have a question that you'd like for me to consider answering on a future episode? Send me an email at tri_doc@icloud.com, or join the private TriDoc Podcast Facebook group on Facebook, and you can submit your questions there. If you're interested in coaching services, please visit tridoccoaching.com or lifesportcoaching.com, where you can find a lot of information about me and the services that I provide. You can also follow me on the TriDoc Podcast Facebook page, TriDoc Coaching on Instagram, and the TriDoc Coaching YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this podcast, I hope that you'll consider leaving me a rating and a review, as well as subscribe to the show wherever you download it. And of course, there's always the option of becoming a supporter of the podcast at patreon.com/TriDoc Podcast. The music heard at the beginning and the end of the show is Radio by Empty Hours and is used with permission. This song and many others like it can be found at ReverbNation.com, where I hope that you'll visit and give small independent bands a chance. The TriDoc Podcast will be back again soon with another medical question for me to answer and another interview with someone in the world of multisport. Until then, remember 1121 and train hard, train healthy.